Awesome. Awesome. So recording started. So for tonight, we're just kind of going over a lot of the basic portions of the beginning of race management for the season. So typically, this is where in the trainings I would start with, do you know how to get to your dashboard page? Hopefully most of you do, but just in case, I do want to go over that really quickly. So the easiest way, in my opinion, is to go to myracepass.com. Once you're on myracepass.com, up here in the top right corner, you'll see either log in or you'll see your name. If you see your name, you're already logged in. If you log in button, go ahead and get yourself logged in. From there, and all you'll need to do after you've logged in is then you'll see an option in the list for My Profiles. My Profiles is either going to take you into a page that shows you every profile that you're a part of, which I believe in most of your cases won't be very many pages, if any access. Or if you're only an admin on one page, it's going to take you straight into the dashboard of that page. So from there, now that you're on the dashboard page here, we typically go over a couple of quick items here at the beginning. So one is going to be the app favorites. Basically, that's just anybody that has favorited your facility in the MyRacePass app. Again, that's really just to your benefit because those people do have the potential to get push notifications about what is happening at the facility. Specifically, if you do a website through us or even without the website, just publish news articles to your profile. And when you go live for the race night, as well as fantasy racing notifications. So again, just trying to keep people engaged with what's happening at your facility. More than anything, you just kind of want to watch this number go up, not down. The last thing we try and touch on right here on the very beginning page is going to be the sandbox. So the sandbox itself is going to open up and it's going to have some blue text to the left. So the gray bar on the left turns blue, and up here at the very top, it turns blue. The advantage there from there, that just lets you know that you're in the sandbox and that's a place to play from. So the advantage to the sandbox is that it's a place for you to play without anybody being able to see what you're doing. Basically, if you've got a question that you're not sure what a button does, how it works, etc., that's kind of the place you want to do that and try and put yourself into a good place without everybody else being able to see it and start questioning what you're doing. From there, the next things that we go through would be the profile tab. Profile tab is fairly straightforward, but I do want to touch on one item here that I personally think is very critical and can be extremely beneficial to all of your different facilities. And that is, if you catch here, this one box here that says edit profile, every 6 months, this is going to turn red with a little exclamation point if you have not edited it in the last 6-month time period. What that is letting you know is that this profile tab, this profile page here, has not been looked at in 6 months. What you want to do here is just make sure the information is accurate, for one. For two, use that description to your advantage. If there's anything that has happened at your facility that might entice somebody to go there over going to somebody else or somewhere else, go ahead and get that put in there. I like to point out that, a lot of racetrack facilities have been used for movies and TV shows and commercials and things like that over the years, even if not for the racing specifically, but just the grounds were used for that. Or any historical events that happened at your facility, a political rally, another driver that won something extremely important, that kind of thing. Go ahead and put that in your descriptions and entice people to come to see you. Addressing information is all pretty obvious there. The Google Meet location is, again, fairly obvious. You just want to make sure that that's all accurate. The last piece I like to touch on really heavily here is this track features. Just pop in here every 6 or 8 months and just double check that the information is still accurate, especially if you've been doing upgrades at your facility. The big thing there is that a lot of this kind of thing is what changes it from being just 1 or 2 people to 4 or 5 people going to your event on that given night. So take a look at that when you get some time. Moving down, billing is obviously exactly what it sounds like. That's where your invoices and anything of that nature is going to pop up. From there, the last piece that we want to hit on heavily here is going to be the users page. And just very quickly, you're really not going to be doing a whole lot with it outside of you're going to click an add user permission, first name, last name, and you're going to be choosing site administrator or box office or ticket redemption. And so we don't want to leave it on those pages too long, but the 3 different roles there, administrators have access to everything on your page. A box office role have access to the box office ticketing screen, which allows them to sell tickets at your front gate. And then ticket redemption allows for them to scan tickets in and out of your gate, into your gate at any point in time. So those are just ways for you to give somebody a couple of access. Basically, if you're hiring some people that you don't want to have access to everything, but you want them to be able to scan tickets in for you, etc., that's where you'll do that. From there, we'll jump down to season management. And so season management, really on the very, very broad scale here, is where you're going to set up your 2024 and future seasons. So the first step, and this is the one that we fully expect that some of you are going to forget, and that's okay. Right here at the very top, where it says 2024, your favorite track, you'll be able to click new season. So each and every season, you'll click new season. It creates these new seasons here for you. Again, fully expect that some of you are going to forget that and have to ask about it. Not a big deal at all. It's one of those items you only touch it once a year, so it's very easy to forget about. Otherwise, you're going to get an overview page here. The very first bit here is going to be upcoming events that you've got scheduled, recently completed events, and then pending yearly administration, pending yearly registrations, and then your active suspensions. So just a very broad dashboard for you to take a look at some things, and that's where we'll start going down through the rest of this list. So the configuration, obviously there's going to be some differences from track to track, facility to facility, but in general, on a broad scale, for a track facility, you're going to have one track. It's just going to be you. At that point, then you're going to add your touring series. So that's anybody that's going to be coming through for you. And the reason for doing the series is first, most importantly, is that it's going to add the class of cars that goes with that class. So as an example here, if I use, I'm trying to think of something on asphalt. We could use ARCA again. So as Austin did before there, he's got the ARCA series added. So we're going to add East, and then we'll click Add. That's going to pop up. And since we already had the ARCA car class added, it didn't need to add that again, but it did add the ARCA Menards East series for us there. So the same principle happens for every one of your traveling series, is it adds the car that goes with that series to your classing. Once you've added all of your series in, then you'll go ahead and start adding in your specific classes that are more specific to your race nights and that are not necessarily traveling. Classes, the biggest thing there is that it's important that it stays correct. And it's important that if you've got any questions on it, please just reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to help you make sure we've got the right classes. It's very easy to end up with doing something 1 year that causes a bigger problem 2 and 3 years down the line. So if you do have any questions on it, please reach out to us. Support@myracepass.com is your best friend in that case. As most of you guys should already know, we're consistently watching that and are more than happy to make sure that we answer you as quickly as possible. After the configuration, we go into the I'm going to skip registrations for just a moment. We're going to go to events first. So the events is obviously where you're going to be adding in the actual race nights that are happening. Now, one thing that can be a little bit confusing here is that we have the ability for multiple schedules within your season. So think of 2024 season as just being an over-encompassing bucket that everything that is happening in 2024 is going to happen in. And then you can separate that bucket with some dividers into different schedules. And those schedules you could utilize for multiple different reasons. In a lot of cases, you're not going to need multiple schedules. But if, for example, you were going to have a sponsor that wanted to do like a 6-race shootout kind of deal for one of the classes, you could create a new schedule for that purpose. and then have a different point standing that goes to those 6 races. And so that's basically how this is set up here, where we've got a few different um, schedules that we put in at different times. Adding a schedule is pretty straightforward. You'll just click add schedule. You can put a description for it, and then you just click add. And in general, you're going to want to leave these buttons all active. Once you have the schedule created, you can click into any given schedule. So I'll click into this one here, and that gives me all the events that I've scheduled on that schedule. This is where I would then go ahead and click add events, and I can go ahead and add another event. So I'm going to add one for 27, potentially. Yep, perfect. NASCAR webinar night 1. I can go ahead and put any details I want about that event, my open times, so my pit opens, my gate opens, my hot lap times, my racing start times, and then I'll add all of the classes that are going to be racing on that given night. So I'm going to grab 2 classes that I typically use for most of my trainings, and then we'll click add. That goes ahead and puts it on my schedule. If I need to change the status of that event, I will do that by clicking into the event as I had just done. At that point, I can go ahead and modify any of those times that I had already set if something changes, add more of a description or remove something from the description if needed. And then 2 more things will happen here. Depending on your area, your type of racing, etc., you will find that some of your drivers are going to start adding these events to their schedules as well. So that'll be listed down here underneath schedules. And then you can use that for some marketing purposes. I typically try to tell people not to use a specific person or specific driver's name, but rather just indicate that, hey, we've already had 8 or 10 or 12 or 20 drivers that have added it to their schedule. So you have an idea of who's coming. And then from there, if you do need to change the status of that event, right down here at the very bottom where it says running as scheduled is where you'll be able to change the status of that specific event. So as it sits, running as scheduled is the typical normal. We then have options for rainouts, postpones, canceled, dropped, no results, snowed out, flooded, or high winds. That should encompass most situations for most tracks. Excuse me. But if you were going to postpone an event or cancel an event, you would go ahead and change that status. You're able to enter a message with it. So again, anybody that has done the favorites will have the opportunity to see that message that you've put on there. And then you will type in whatever text it tells you right here into this box, all caps, mark that you understand, and click confirm. 2 big things I want to note with this portion of things. One is that be very careful when you are changing the status of an event. You want to make sure that you're doing the right event on the right day, because once those people have those notifications, it's very hard to recover from that. And so every one of your guys' profiles is going to be different. You know, some of you are going to have 10, 20, 30 people that have favorited it. Some of you have 400 or 500 that have favorited it. That can make a big difference for you. So just be very careful on that. Secondarily, when it comes to the status there, the other thing that we want to note is a little bit different about our system. And maybe it's kind of a different thought process, but we really heavily believe in this. And that is that once an event is on your schedule, we don't ever really want it to go away and remove it from your schedule as a whole. So basically, once it's out there, people can see it. People have seen it. They may have screenshotted it. They may have, taken snapshots of it or anything like that. And then if they go back to look and all of a sudden the event just doesn't exist on your schedule, they get very confused. And that can lead to a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails and just excess time that, frankly, none of us have. So that's why we really do heavily believe in using the postpone, the canceled, the dropped options, putting a notification in there. That event is still going to show on your schedule, but it's going to have that designation next to it for you to utilize to let people know what has happened with that event. And then once clicking into that event, they'll be able to see that, you've that message that you've postponed it to another date. Again, continuing down here, so we're actually going to move back to registrations now. And so the reason that I skip registrations initially and I go to events first is that we have several different types of registrations. So one is a very basic track yearly registration. So if you're a track that charges $20 for a driver to buy their track license, etc., for the year, that's how you can do that. That's your favorite track yearly registration, right here at the top. Even if you don't charge drivers, which is how this one is set up, it's free. Go ahead and do this. This is the best way for you to collect all of their contact information except for their tax ID or social security numbers. The reason I say it's your best possible way to do it is, quite frankly, most drivers have very poor handwriting. And we all struggle when we're trying to figure out if that's an 8 or a 6 or a 5 or what's going on that paper. With it being digital, their contact information is much easier to read for you to, if you do need that phone number, if you do need that email address, etc. So yearly registration, that's very pertinent for you. The one other place that that's going to become a very pertinent thing is that if you are using our system to a larger extent, and you're tracking your payments throughout the year so you know what you need the 1099 people for, there is a 1099 report that'll come at the end of the year. And on that report, you're going to find that some drivers have addressing information listed with it, and some of them don't. The ones that do are the ones that have done a registration. The ones that don't are the ones that have not done a registration with you. So it becomes to your advantage to have them do that registration so you make sure that you've got that addressing information so you can take care of your 1099s at the end of the year in a much easier fashion. Beyond the yearly registration, we also have options for event-specific registrations, general registration, and miscellaneous competitor. Miscellaneous competitor is essentially another yearly registration. So it acts the same way, but it's not tied to a specific event. It's not necessarily tied to a specific year. So if you were a track that does some sort of a crew membership where they could get a discounted pit pass if they buy their membership, something like that, you could do that as a miscellaneous competitor registration. Or, sorry, that would be a general registration. I apologize. So a general registration is for a non-racing event. It is not tied directly to a competitor. Miscellaneous competitor registration, again, like I said, it's just like a yearly registration. So if you had a purpose where you needed a second yearly registration, I'm not thinking of one off the top of my head currently, that's where you could use that. And then event registration is fairly straightforward and self-explanatory. It is tied directly to a specific event. So with that, we have recently launched a different payment plan for registrations, which we have not used in the past, but everybody was pretty heavily wanting to have happen. So moving forward, our preferred method of payment for registrations is directly through an ACH payment to your bank account rather than using PayPal. There's a couple different ways that gets paid out depending on the type of registration and then an options that you can choose at the end of the registration. But the base level and the preferred options are yearly registrations are paid out every Monday. Any funds that are available on a yearly registration is paid out every Monday. A fund becomes available by you confirming the registration, and then 7 days after it's been confirmed, it becomes available for payment. So if you were to confirm somebody tonight, next Monday is when they become available to be paid out. And typically by the end of that week, you'll see that money in your bank account. With an event registration, our preferred method is that we would like to give you the funds immediately following the event. So there is a screen that you will go into, just like how you would a ticket sale after the event is completed. State that the event has been completed and you want to go ahead and receive the funds. That the next Monday. So if you raced on Saturday, Monday, those funds would get processed on our end. They'll start being processed by your bank on Tuesday. Again, typically Wednesday to Friday, you'll see those funds in your account. The reason we prefer to pay it after the event is to your advantage. We will take care of any refunds if you decide you're going to do a refund for that event for any set of reasons. So if that event does not happen and you want to refund all of the pre-registration money, we can do that for you quickly, easily. And then we also take care of any chargebacks or questions on the chargings for you. If we pay out prior to the event, we can't do that for you. So that is why it's our preferred method, because we're trying to help you guys there. Confirming a registration is fairly simple. So all you will see is you'll have this column of pending registrations here on the left. On the right, I can't talk. You'll be able to click into that class. You'll see the unconfirmed registrations in yellow. Confirmed registrations are in white. At that point, you'll click on confirm. If the driver has claimed their profile and they were logged in while they did the registration, you don't have to do any other work here. It's already chosen them. You'll put in their car number. And then in this case, we're going to put in a payment method. So they've chosen that there's an owner. In this case, in our demo example here, we have David Hasselhoff as his owner. So we're going to put David Hasselhoff in here as who gets paid for that. Right. So once it's confirmed, like I said, 7 days from then is when those funds would become available on a yearly registration for you. Same thing is true of an event registration. You do have to go in and confirm all of the registrants in order for those funds to become available for you after the event. So continuing down here, the point screen is exactly what it sounds like. This is where you'd be able to see your competitor points by class. So you can move around here right up at the top. You can change which schedule you're looking at right here at the top if you have multiple schedules. And then you can see some basic stats if you have any questions for those right away, as well as their points. And this earnings column is completely private to you at the track. That will never be public for any fans or other drivers to see. At that point, if you had any questions on a specific driver, you can click into it and see what events they had been pointed out for and what races they got what points for. You'll also be able to see here what events were included in that point standing. Continuing down, payments, again, that is completely private for you, for your use case to keep track of everything. But if you have any questions about who got paid, when, what checks you printed, all of that kind of information, this is where you'll find that. You're able to click into any one of these, see what checks you printed, who you printed them to, and for what totals. Fantasy racing, so fantasy racing is something that we want to push. We want you guys to push more. And it's to your benefit. The entirety of fantasy racing is about engaging with your specific fans. So as we all know, everybody's got a phone in their hand. They're constantly looking at it. They're constantly playing with it. So would you rather have them looking at a bunch of pictures of their buddies boating and thinking about how they're going to go do that next weekend, or maybe they're going to make some picks and see how their fantasy team is doing, and hopefully they're not thinking about going somewhere else next weekend and they're thinking about how they're going to be back at your facility. So fantasy does happen automatically for you. At the end, every race night, as you create your first set of lineups, fantasy racing goes live. People get a push notification that that's available for them. They can start making their picks. It is very, very, very simple. This is not like fantasy football. I need a digest and 8 different computer screens trying to figure out what I'm doing. It is as simple as the drivers are broken down into groups of 2 to 5 drivers. And hey, which driver is going to run the best out of that small group of 2 to 5? Pick that driver and click save. Go ahead, Chris.
Excuse me. Just to add to that, you guys, I don't think you guys have Facebook or not, but there's a link to one of the promoters that shared their fantasy racing trophy. They created the trophy. They sold title sponsorship to their fantasy racing league. They made some pretty good money off of it, and they had a lot of fans playing that night. and that's the trophy the winner got for that specific event. And so it's a great fan engagement that fans want to play for, and you guys can make money by selling title sponsorship to the leaderboard. So like Hawkeye Downs could have the John's Body Shop Hawkeye Downs Fantasy League, and they could, give him prizes and go ahead and donate some money to there. So it's just a great way to really kind of get your fans engaged, as Dakota said, and have your fans have fun with it. And then everybody loves fantasy racing. There's no downside at all to the fantasy racing side. It's really going to be a game changer for you guys.
So, David, to your question there, fantasy racing is a part of the MRP All Access subscription on the app. So they do have to be an All Access subscriber on the app. Doing so basically gives them access to everything that we have to offer for the fan side, and they're not cut off from anything. As well, it gives them the option of playing more than just your one tracks fantasy. So maybe they're playing there at Southern National with you, but they're also playing Brian's over at Hawkeye Downs, and it's kind of engaging them in the racing community as a whole. I know personally that has intrigued me to want to go to some other tracks that maybe I hadn't thought about previously. And I know it sounds kind of silly, but sometimes the smallest things can garner some people's interest. So beyond the free portion of that, what Chris was getting at there is that you can come in here and click and create a leaderboard. So with that, you have all different kinds of options. You could sell some sponsorships to it. You could reach out to some sponsors that you already have and get with them to create, a custom trophy for you, or maybe you just give your winners some tickets to go to your banquet and hang out with your drivers. And again, it's creating more and more things to keep the people's interest in what you have going on there at your facility and or in the greater racing community as a whole. Personally, I tend to play a lot of fantasy racing. I've probably played fantasy for every one of the facilities that are in these sessions right this minute. So, use that to your advantage as fit. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I'll even mention that too. One thing to think about as a staff here, we want to play fantasy racing as well, but we try not to win because we want the fans to win. So like if your staff wants to play, but you're like, hey, don't win. One cool thing to do there is try and finish dead last. It's a lot harder than you think it is. So that's our challenge internally. So we with Chili Bowl, our goal is to finish dead last, and I end up doing better than if I were to actually play and try and win. So it's kind of a cool alternative there for you guys and your staff. That way they don't win the prizes fans should. But as Dakota mentioned, he plays a lot and he knows a lot of drivers. So it's not really fair for us against him.
So fantasy there. If you got any further questions on it, please reach out to us again. I'll probably say it 3 or 4 more times before the end of this. Support@myracepass.com. That is your best friend. Austin and I, that is our full-time jobs, is paying attention to that email inbox, as well as several other people as we get busy and things get a little bit crazy leading into race season. So beyond that, the last piece here is going to be suspensions. And suspensions are exactly what it sounds like. It is a way for you to track that you've gone ahead and you've suspended this driver, and then those that are doing your check-in will not be able to add them into your list for the race night without marking that they understand that this driver was suspended and they weren't supposed to be on the list. It is a relatively new feature. So again, if you have any questions on it, or if anything doesn't quite seem the way that it should seem, please reach out and talk to us. We're always more than happy to take some feedback and see what we can improve or change. No, the suspensions are not public. So they are only for you privately, at least at this time. There's kind of some gray areas from a legal standpoint and a few other things to making something like that public. But it's kind of a wonky situation. So for now, they're private to your track. Though it would be very easy for you to take a screenshot of the screen and send it to other tracks that you work with to note that you've made these suspensions or something like that. So I know that's a big thing in the Wisconsin area, which is probably where you're coming a little bit from there, Brian. Since you're working a little closer with a lot of those asphalt tracks, they do a lot of suspension sharing. So adding a suspension is fairly straightforward. You'll click a suspension type, any fee that has to get paid, what competitor it goes to, You can add a date range. So after a specific date, if they're only suspended for a month, they're suspended for a month. Internal notes are just for you, whoever's entering it, meaning that nobody else is going to see that initially. They actually have to come into this screen to see those notes. Backgate notes are what whoever's doing so in the entry screen, this is where they would actually see those notes. So if you wanted it to state that it was just on this date for this reason, just so that whoever's signing them in, they have an explanation to give that driver when they go, hey, I'm noted that you're suspended. Please contact Brian, or please contact Vernon, whoever it needs to be. Again, suspensions is fairly new, so if you do have any questions there, please just reach out to us and let us know. We want to help you out. We want to work with you and do as much as we can from there. That is 99% of anything we were intending on hitting tonight. So we try and keep these sessions fairly short during these webinars because, quite frankly, we have a lot of options for you. We have a lot of parts and pieces, and it's very hard to remember every little piece that comes across. So as we kind of come to a close here, if there are any questions or comments, please feel free to throw them in the messages, in the comments on the Facebook side, in the comments on the Google Meet side. More than happy to answer anything that we can. Most importantly, just pay attention that, support@myracepass.com is your best friend. More than happy to answer as often as possible or as often as needed. And the biggest thing from our end of things, we want to remind everybody that we're here to help you guys, and we want to make everything as easy and smooth as possible on your race nights. So with that said, if there's nothing else here, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and let you guys get on with your nights.